Hello students, welcome again to the chapter 1 part 2 of education subject. My name is Miss Mughakali and today I'll be discussing with you the chapter 1 part 2 of our education subject. In the part 1, in the first class, that is the part 1 of our chapter 1, I've discussed with you the etymological meaning of education. I've also discussed with you the different definitions of education and also different definitions given by Western philosophers, Western educationists. I've also discussed with you the definitions given by different Indian philosophers, thinkers and educationists as well. And we've also discussed education as a result-oriented process and salient features of education. So now I'll be continuing from the chapter 19 of your textbook. Let's look at the examples of education portrayed by different Western philosophers. Okay, they have given different examples to portray education, to compare it with education. So let's look at point number 1, that is pottery. Potter is like a teacher and clay is children. Like potter, teacher, that is the potter, that is the teacher, molds and shape the clay, that is the child. We must have all seen people bringing mud and molding it and shaping it into a beautiful pot, right? So education is portrayed as pottery. Potter means the potter is the teacher and the clay is the children or the students. Means the teacher is molding the children. The teacher is molding the children into important people in the society. Tabu jug. Here, jug is the teacher and mug is the child. Teacher, that is the jug with knowledge and wisdom, pours into the mug, that is the child. Tabula rasa. The mind of a child is like a clean slate, unwritten when born. Parents being the first teacher. See, after you are born, you don't go directly to school, right? But in your initial years, in the 1 to till you reach the age of maybe 4, you are with your parents. Your parents are teaching you basic values and different concepts. So parents being the first teacher and the school teacher being the second teacher. Like after you are done with your initial stage, you come to school. Excuse me, you come to school and you receive different formal system of education. You also receive different knowledge. You also receive different discipline through your teachers and through the school. So parents being the first teacher and the school teacher right only through the process of education. Tabula rasa means you students, the students are regarded as a clean slate. Means your mind is blank, even if you have inborn talents or even if you have inborn like creativity in you, without processing it out or without molding it out or without shaping it, you are still a clean slate, you are still a blank slate. So through the process of education, the slate, we write on the slate, right? We don't just leave it like that. Through the process of education, the mind of the child and the thinking capacity of the child is molded and developed. So now let's look at the qualities. What does the term education mean? Okay, what does the word education means? Education is, E stands for efficiency, D for discipline, U for understanding, C for confidence, T for techniques, C for confidence, F for application, T for techniques, I for interpretation, O for organization, and N for newness. So education means efficiency, discipline, understanding, confidence, application, techniques, interpretation, organization, and newness. So what does efficiency mean? Efficiency means to produce desired result. The result that you desire or the goal that you desire or the aim that you desire. It is the efficiency means the the ability to produce desired result. Discipline means control behavior, controlling your behavior in a good way. And understanding means having understanding for the situation or the people around you, having understanding of different concepts, having understanding of different knowledges. So understanding means having understanding for people and situation around you. Confidence means, in simple term, it means self-assurance, assuring yourself that you can do it, or in other words, confidence means just say, it is motivating yourself. Confidence means motivating yourself or assuring yourself. It is self-assurance. Application means applying required knowledge to relevant situation. Like I've discussed in the part 1, being able to apply relevant situation or being able to apply relevant knowledge to relevant situation. I think it is one of the main basic, or I think it is one of the important point of education. So being application means being able to apply required knowledge to relevant situation. Techniques means skill. Interpretation means translation of different concepts of education knowledge. Organization means planning. Organization means planning or arranging. And newness means new. So education stands for efficiency, discipline, understanding, confidence, application, techniques, interpretation, organization, and newness. Now let's look at some of the synonyms of education. Synonyms means two words having different meanings. Okay, so synonym means words. They are different words. Okay, they are different words, but they possess the same meaning. So let's look at the synonyms for education. Number one is vidya. Vidya is derived from the Sanskrit word vid, which means to know. So vidya means, in short, means it stands for acquired knowledge, which is the same as education. Knowledge brings change in the individual behavior. So vidya stands for acquiring knowledge. Number two is gyan. Gyan is also a Sanskrit word which is a substitute for education. Gyan is used as a substitute for education. Gyan means an educated person. It means a person of knowledge and wisdom. In other words, it also means educated person. Shiksha. Shiksha is a Hindi word, and it is also derived from a Sanskrit word, shiks, which means to teach or to discipline. Shiksha means to teach or to discipline the young ones or the young learners. Pedagogy. Pedagogy is considered as a science of instruction for the purpose of leading a learner to find the truth about different theoretical concepts. It leads a learner to find truths about different theoretical concepts. Moving on, let's look at the different concepts of education. By now, we must all be aware, and I think we are all clear that education or the concept of education or the definition of education differs from time to time and from philosophers to philosophers. Okay, like I said earlier, it is not defined to one universally accepted meaning, but it differs from time to time and from philosophers to philosophers. Now, let's look at the different concepts of education given by different expertise on education. Number one is education is a process. Education is a process means education is a set of procedure. Single idea or experiences does not constitute education. I think I've also discussed this point in the part one of our first class. Single idea or experiences does not form education. The interrelated and repeated ideas or experiences make up education. Thus, education is not a single idea or process. It is not a single idea or process, but in fact, it is a set of procedures and it is a set of experiences and it is a process. Point number two, education is a process of harmonious development. In the process of education, different aspects, that is the physical, mental, aesthetic, spiritual, emotional, social, moral, and everything comes under the wholesome development of an individual. So education is a process of harmonious development. The positive and balanced development in a man is called education. The harmony in the various aspects of development, as these are interrelated with each other. All these social, aesthetic, or the spiritual, the moral, all these are interrelated to an individual. Hence, education is a process of harmony, producing harmony or harmonious development of an individual. Education is a process of individual adjustment. Since birth, the individual start adjusting. After an individual or after a child is born, he starts adjusting with his self, his parents, brother, sister, teacher, friend, and the members of the community and society. In this way, like he not only adjusts with his environment or with himself, but according to that, in that way, he changes his behavior and tries to modify it. He changes his behavior in a way that he is able to adjust with his peer groups, or he is able to adjust with the society. In a way, he doesn't remain static or he doesn't remain stiff, but according to his adjustment, he is also modifying his behavior, which is called education. It is a continuous process of an individual, and adjustment is very important. Adjustment is very important for a successful, happy and meaningful life. So education is a process of individual adjustment. Education is a dynamic process. Dynamic means it keeps on changing, okay? The process of education, like it undergoes various progressive changes in according to the place and needs of the society. See, like your curriculum or the curriculum, your textbook, let's just say your textbook or the syllabus keeps on changing from time to time, right? The board keeps on changing your syllabus time to time because it needs to meet with the needs of an individual or with the needs of the society. So education is a dynamic process. It keeps on changing from time to time. Education is a purposeful project. In the process of education, there are at least two persons. In the process of education, there are at least two persons, that is the student and the teacher. Like with their joint efforts, me just teaching, but if you are not listening or if you are not being able to understand or if you are not giving heed to what I'm saying, that it doesn't meet the needs of or the aims of education. So education is a purposeful project. With the process of teaching and learning, teacher motivates the learner to accept or to learn the concept, and the learner learns the concept or the aim and achieves the goal. Hence, education is a purposeful project. Education is a lifelong process. These points, we will be coming across this point now and again, but like education is a lifelong process means it starts from the time you were born till the day you die. All experiences that influences the individual from birth to death, all experiences, any experiences it may be. If you have coming across different experiences that influence you, that is called education. We learn from each and every experiences. See, like let's just say you come across a certain experiences and you hurt yourself from it. So next time when you are coming across that same experiences, you will remember the lessons that you have learned and you will refrain yourself from doing that same experiences. So experiences, in other words, is another name of education, okay? So like experiences is another name of education. So education is a lifelong process. Education is a science and arts at the same time. See, using systematic and methodical study of facts with scientific methods for better teaching, and at the same time shaping the raw materials and his behavior into a well-cultured person. We are using certain methods, certain scientific methods or certain raw materials. We are bringing all the raw materials, or we are bringing the concepts, the aims. We bring it all together and we shape the raw material. That is the students. We shape the raw materials into a well-cultured person. Thus, education can be regarded as science as well as an art. At the same time, education is regarded as science and arts at the same time. Thus, education is both art and science. Now, moving on, let's look at the process of education. Process of education. Education is there are three processes of education. That is the single polar or unipolar process, number one. Number two is education is a bipolar process. And number three is education is a tripolar process. So education is a single polar process. Single polar means unipolar. In ancient times, education was for few persons, okay, like mainly from the royal families in Gurukuls. At the time, Guru teacher was a monarch and pupil had to just obey the order of the Guru. So single polar means the Guru being the center of education, or the Guru being the main main instructor, and the teacher, the students have to follow the orders of the Guru. The rules and the regulation were solely based on what Guru had decided. So it was a single polar process. Point number two is education is a bipolar process. Bipolar means bi means two. So education is a bipolar process, means it takes place between the teacher and the pupil. In this process of education, there are two poles. In the bipolar process, there are two poles. That is the teacher and the student. Teacher teaches the students. Teacher teaches the students and the students learn. That is from one pole, the teacher is teaching the students, and the other end of the pole, the student is learning what the teacher is teaching. This is teaching learning process of education. Bipolar is also known as the teaching learning process of education. The interaction between these poles, that is the teacher and the student, is very important for achieving the goals, the aims and objectives of education. So this process is called as the bipolar process of education, means which includes the teacher and the pupil. Point number 3 is education is a tripolar process. Now we have understood what is single polar, what is bipolar. Now what is a tripolar process? Tripolar process means it includes the teacher, the pupils and the society. John Dewey, the most famous educationist, according to him, this tripolar process, this concept was developed by John Dewey. All these three poles are very important for modifying the behavior of a learner. Education is a process for preparing the students for his life in the society. The process of education should help the pupils to acquire the attitudes and behavior which is accepted by the society. The motivation of the teacher, the knowledge to be attained from curriculum can help the teacher to acquire positive attitude and good behavior for better dwelling in the society. So education is a tripolar process. Now I hope you are all aware of the single polar, bipolar and the tripolar process. Now we will look at the meaning of education, that is the narrow and the broader meaning of education. See, if you look at the textbook, I think they have given a very long definition and very complicated definition between the narrow and the broader meaning of education, okay? So I'll just explain in a way that you'll understand. I'll just explain in simple terms, so listen carefully. Narrow meaning of education. What is the narrow meaning of education? To impart instructions for learning in schools and colleges. The education or the knowledge that you receive in the four corners of the classroom, the formal system of education is known as the narrow meaning of education. Here, in the four corners of the classroom or in the school, the narrow meaning of education or the narrow term of education, here everything is very systematic, okay? Like it is very systematic, it is very perfect and it is predetermined. The curriculum methods of teaching, examination and teacher are prefixed and predetermined. It is a systematic process to achieve the definite goals of education through classroom instruction. Means a goal is set in our curriculum, the goal is that you have to study the whole year and you have to get promoted to the next class. So this type of education or the type of education that is already predetermined and pre-planned is known as the narrow meaning of education. It is often best between the four corners of the classroom, so I hope you are aware, or I hope it is known to you now what is narrow meaning of education. Moving on, let's look at the broader meaning of education. In the broader sense, education is not limited. It is the broader meaning of education is totally opposite to the narrow meaning of education, okay? So I want you to be clear about that. In the broader sense, education is not confined to the four corners of the classroom. It is a lifelong process. Education is a lifelong process. We have discussed about that earlier. So it is a lifelong process. From the time you are born till the day you die, those experiences or those education comes under the broader meaning of education. It is the modification of behavior and experiences from different meaning and different source of education. See, education means, it doesn't mean only formal system of education, okay? There are different aspects of education. There are different different aspects of education. The formal system of education, next one is the informal system of education and the non-formal system of education. In the later part of, as we go through different chapters, we will be coming across these three different aspects of education. So all these three different aspects come under the broader meaning of education. Formal education, let me just give a bit gist of what we'll be learning. Formal education means education that you receive in the school. And informal system of education means education that you learn when you're with the society, the community, when you attend a conference or seminars, or when you are indulge in different activities set up by the society, etc. All these are informal system of education. What is non-formal education? Non-formal education means experiences and education that you receive in your family. that is family experiences or the knowledge or the values or the culture that you receive in your family is or within your peer groups or within the groups within your friend circle. All this type of education is known as the non-formal system of education. So all these informal, non-formal and all this education, it comes under the broader meaning of education, as it is not confined to the four corners of the classroom. Broader meaning of education is very broad. It covers all concepts of education. So all the little experiences that you come across, or like I said earlier, all the experiences you come across and all the lessons that you learn through those experiences, it comes under the broader meaning of education. Let's look at the difference between literacy and education. Literacy and education. We must have all heard about the term literate, illiterate, educated person, uneducated person, right? So we are going to be learning the difference between literacy and education. See, literacy and education are often used as synonyms. Synonyms means, like I said earlier, it is having the same meaning. They are often used as synonyms to each other, okay? But these two terms are not one and are not the same. Literacy means, literate or literacy means, is a knowledge or the ability to read, write, and do little arithmetic. Arithmetic means math. A person who can do this function is called a literate person. Literacy is an instruction or knowledge. Schooling, instruction, or training are the concepts which is the part of literacy. Being able to read and write, being able to understand different concepts, being able to do a little arithmetic, the knowledge that you receive from the formal system of education, being able to complete all these concepts or come under all these concepts, being able to read and write, all these are known as literacy. Literacy means, literacy can also come under the narrow concept of education, okay? See, in your textbook it is also given, literacy can be described as education in narrow sense. Like we've discussed earlier, the difference between the narrow system of education, narrow concept of education and the broader concept of education. So literacy comes under the narrow concept of education. See, literacy and an educated person can be called literate, while illiterate, or every literate person cannot be called educated. So let's look at what education means, the difference between literacy and education. Education is aimed at the harmonious development of all aspects: physical, intellectual, emotional, social, spiritual, moral, aesthetic fields of an individual. The type of knowledge. See, every day we are receiving different kinds of knowledge through the school, the society, the peer groups. So the type of knowledge that we learn bring changes in our behavior and character, which becomes education. See, you being able to read and write simply doesn't make you an educated person, okay? The knowledge that you receive, if you are able to mold it and shape it, and if you are able to use that for the modification of your behavior, then it comes under the concept of education, and it becomes education. The change in the behavior through knowledge is very important, and it is called education. The change in behavior, I think in your first class I've said one of the simplest and the shortest definition of education is change in behavior, right? So the change in the behavior through knowledge that you receive, through the narrow through the narrow system of education that you receive, the knowledge that you receive, through that knowledge, if you are able to modify your behavior, if you are able to change your behavior for the wholesome development, if you are able to think, have a free thinking mind, if you are able to develop your lifestyle in a positive way, then all this comes under education. Literacy is not an end to education, okay? It is the beginning. Literacy is only a part of education. Literacy can be considered as a means to education. So in order to be educated, first you need to be literate. So literacy is considered as a means to education. So I hope these have made the concept of literacy and education more clear. Now you can differentiate between the literacy and education, or he is literate and he or she is educated. The aim should be to make people, the main aim of education should be to make people literate as well as educated. So I think that is all for the part 2 of your chapter 1. I'll see you all in the next class. Thank you all.